Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching Newsnight on DD India and DD News, your prime-time destination for news and bespoke analysis. It's good to have you again with us. On the show tonight, a deep dive into the issue of cyber threat. It is a clear and present danger. Countries and companies alike are taking steps to boost their cyber security. For instance, the U.S. telecommunications regulator, the Federal Communications Commission, has formally designated Chinese firms Huawei and ZTE as posing threats to the U.S. national security. Australia has announced its 2020 Defence Strategic Update, a 10-year defence plan in which it has made its largest ever investment in its cyber security capabilities with a new $1.35 billion investment over the next decade. India is not far behind either. It's also taken measures to tackle cyber threats. Also on the show, Digital India turns 5. We revisited Prime Minister Modi's flagship program, which promises to transform India into a digitally empowered society and knowledge economy. Plus, 1st July is National Doctors' Day. On this day, we offer our thanks and express our gratitude to doctors and medical professionals who work round the clock to serve you and me, especially at a time when the country is faced with the COVID-19 pandemic. All that and much, much more coming up over the next 60 minutes. But first, as always, the headlines. Union Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad said the ban on Chinese apps is an opportunity to come with apps made by Indians. He was speaking on the completion of 5 years of Digital India program. US supports India's move to ban 59 Chinese apps. US Foreign Minister Mike Pompeo says India's clean app approach will boost India's sovereignty, integrity and national security. Road Transport and Highway Minister Nitin Gadkari says India will not allow Chinese companies to participate in highway projects, including joint ventures. Says government will ensure Chinese investors are not entertained in the MSME sector. India and China emphasize the need for an expeditious, phased and stepwise de-escalation as a priority. Senior military commanders from the Indian Army and Chinese PLA held a meeting on Tuesday. Home Ministry declares 9 individuals related to Khalistan movement as terrorists under provisions of the UAPA Act. This comes after the Act was amended in 2019 to include a provision of designating an individual as a terrorist. President Ramnath Kovind and Prime Minister Narendra Modi wished the nation on National Doctors' Day. The Prime Minister says the country salutes doctors who are at the forefront of a spirited fight against COVID-19. On, Home Minister Amit Shah assured the Chief Minister of assistance. One CRPF personnel martyred, 3 injured and a civilian killed in exchange of fire between security forces and terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir's Sopore village. Indian Army guns down a terrorist in a failed infiltration bid at Keri area of Rajouri district in the state. And more than 2.2 lakh active COVID-19 cases in the country, over 3.47 lakh discharged. 17,400 succumbed to the illness. Global cases across the 1 crore 5 lakh mark. All right, then let's get started. Our cover story is on cyber threat. Now, some foreign entities are allegedly carrying out cyber attacks on an unprecedented scale. Some countries and companies worldwide are veering around to the view that it poses a danger to users everywhere. In some countries, such as the US and Australia, Chinese companies have come under suspicion for their relationship to the Chinese government and Chinese Communist Party. Let's get you the details. Now, the world over, there's a growing discontent over the use of Chinese telecom infrastructure and apps. India's action of banning 59 apps and discouraging the use of China-made hardware in Indian telecom sector is finding appreciation globally. US Foreign Minister Mike Pompeo says India's clean app approach will boost India's sovereignty, integrity, and national security.
We welcome India's ban on certain mobile apps that can serve as an appendages of the CCP's surveillance state. India's clean app approach will boost India's sovereignty. It will also boost India's integrity and national security, as the Indian government itself has stated.
All right, let's get you the graphics on the wall behind me here. We're talking about three countries, the US, Australia, and India. In the US, the FCC is the US telecom regulator, the Federal Communications Commission. Now, Huawei and ZTE have been designated by the FCC as national security threats to the US. And FCC Chairman Ajit Pai says they have ties to China's Communist Party. He also says that Chinese law obligates them to work with China's spy agencies. And moving on to Australia now, Australia announced the 2020 Defence Strategic Update a few days ago. Now, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison says cyber threat landscape is evolving rapidly. Now, Morrison says we will increase our investment in cyber capabilities. Australia too soon announced its new cyber security strategy. Now, Australia will spend $1.35 billion over the next decade to enhance its capabilities. Now, this is the news from Australia so far. Let's move to India now. India says there are concerns on aspects relating to data security and privacy. Now, the privacy about misuse of mobile apps and data theft is also there. Now, data transmitted to servers which have locations outside India is also a big concern for the Indian government, and use of this data by hostile elements affects India's sovereignty and integrity. All right, time for a very short break here on Newsnight. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching Newsnight.
Floodwater leaves behind hidden dangers. It is important to remain watchful. Go back home only after official go-ahead. Get all electrical equipment checked. Check water and sewer lines too. Stay away from slippery flood debris and sharp objects. Watch out for broken electric poles and wires. Use mosquito nets to prevent malaria. Drink boiled or chlorinated water. Don't eat what has been in flood water. Don't let children play in flood water. Help others if you can. Be smart. Be prepared.
On cyber security. Joining me are two very special guests, Pawan Duggal, a cyber law expert, and Mr. R. Chandrasekhar, a former Secretary of Ministry of Electronics and IT and former President of industry body NASSCOM. Gentlemen, thank you and welcome to Newsnight. Let's start with you, Mr. Chandrasekhar. Help our viewers understand how serious a threat is this cyber espionage or data theft and privacy issues.
Well, in today's highly connected world, it is obviously a very, very critical issue. And in the context of the emergence of a number of platforms which have actually become the medium for communication,
right.
Various social media platforms and so on. They actually have millions of users. And in the Indian context, if you take an app like TikTok, they have, by some accounts, about 200 million users, of which at least 120 million are active users. In fact, some people have quoted higher figures than that.
Right.
So all of this provides mountains of information to the platform. And this information can, using technologies that are available today and AI, actually build a lot of intelligence on people, on their thinking, on their interests and their needs and so on. So this intelligence can be used in various ways, and if all of this information is made available outside to outside entities, it has obvious implications.
Right.
So it's a different matter when it is used for only commercial purposes, which by and large now is an accepted fact of life, because all platforms do that to some extent.
Right.
But I'll come to the differences. But just to continue with what the platforms, the kind of strengths that they have, these platforms now can actually slant the information that people get, by allowing certain kinds of information, not allowing certain kinds of information. And the platforms also push information. You get notification on certain kinds of content, which draws you to investigate what that content is. So in many subtle ways, they actually can drive users in a particular direction in terms of what content they see and what content actually access.
Right.
So it's now known that these platforms can and do actually influence even views. They can influence thinking, and there are celebrated examples, not just
Indeed.
Related to China, but even in the Western world itself.
Right.
Examples of Cambridge Analytica, for example. So all of these mean that these platforms have acquired a tremendous, strength and capability of influencing public behavior.
Right.
Now, what is new about these apps, which makes them different from all the other platforms, which also have similar power and strength, and is that in the current scenario, we are also facing a situation where the country of origin of these apps, or at least where the ownership of these apps ultimately rests, we are in a armed confrontation, fairly serious confrontation by all accounts.
Right.
And how this information can be used, or the potential for usage in some contexts, perhaps can be well imagined.
True.
Second aspect which makes these apps completely different, as on a different footing from all the other apps of Western countries, is that there have been a number of allegations repeatedly, that while these have not been substantiated, the allegations are that these companies are very closely linked to the Chinese government, and some allege even to their own armed forces.
Right.
Lastly, the allegation that a lot of this data is being transferred also makes it a concern. So putting all of these factors together, I think that's what drives the decision that we have just seen in the last day.
Indeed. You make a number of valid points there, Mr. Chandrasekhar. If I can bring Mr. Pawan Duggal now in the discussion. Mr. Duggal, let's have a legal viewpoint from you. You are a cyber law expert. In your estimation, are there any legal frameworks at all to tackle this problem of cyber espionage or data theft or privacy issues of the matter?
Well, as far as India is concerned, India appears not to have done its homework in this regard in terms of coming up with enabling legal frameworks.
Okay.
The only thing that India currently has is the Indian Information Technology Act 2000, which basically is an enabling legal framework for promoting e-commerce and electronic governance.
I see.
Till today, India does not have a dedicated cyber security law in place. Till today, India has not put in place its legal regime on data protection, though the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2019 is still pending consideration before the Joint Parliamentary Committee. Further, we have no law in terms of a legal framework on protecting privacy. So once you realize that in a country like this, where there's nothing happening, and even the National Cybersecurity Policy of 2013 has remained a mere paper tiger, it becomes a very fertile, potential targeted territory by all kinds of app makers who want to target this territory, go ahead and offer things free to Indians. And Indians have a massive obsession for having everything free. And once you offer them free, they are ready to give you any kind of permissions, including taking access to all their galleries, their microphones, their cameras for all times to come. And lo and behold, the companies have made these Indian consumers as mere products whose data has been sought to be monetized.
Indeed. Mr. Chandrasekhar, if I can take the same point across to you. Now, you serve in the Ministry of Electronics and IT. How would you respond to Pawan Duggal when he says that there is no cyber security law worth its name in the country today, given the fact that myriad challenges face the country and the government alike?
Mr. Duggal is a well-known expert in cyber law, so I wouldn't want to preach the law to him. But I think it's a bit of an overstatement to say that there is no law or there is no measure. It's true that there has not been any privacy law, and that's the reason why we have a draft bill which is currently before the Parliament. That aims to protect individual privacy, which so far did not actually have the backing of a specific law. But if you look at the threats from the point of view of espionage or things which affect national security,
right,
then there are provisions in the IT Act itself, and I'm sure Mr. Duggal would know more about that than maybe I would. But these provisions, in fact, which have actually been invoked in this particular instance, Section 69A, does specifically refer to threats to national security, threats to the peace and tranquility within the country, and so on.
Right.
Give fairly wide powers to the government to block access to any such information. So I would actually separate out these 2-3 things: privacy, security of the data, and national security. And each of them has a very different set of circumstances surrounding them. And as far as national security is concerned, I believe that we do have instruments that enable us to act. Indeed, these are the very instruments that have been invoked at the current moment. It is possible to think of very specialized law address only these particular issues.
Right.
Certainly, we are not without instruments at the moment. Privacy is the one big gap area which I think has been there, and protecting the privacy of individuals, whether it is from corporations, doing exactly the kind of things which Mr. Duggal talked about apps which can be used to take away your data, all your personal data, sometimes based on consent which is given, so-called informed consent, but basically it says like everything that you have. And people blindly consent without really knowing what it means. But coming back to the question of security and national security, please understand that these permissions are so wide that they actually may even allow these devices, mobile devices, etc., be turned on without the user explicitly doing anything to turn them on. The cameras can be turned on. In some instances, this can be done without even the visible signs that this is happening. So instantly, you actually have 100 million listening posts to hear what is going on. So the implications of all of this are mind-boggling when you think about it, and they are going to get more serious. We get into 5G and much wider band, and much more data flowing through.
True.
So I think we have to look at the future as much as we are looking at the past. It's not just what specific breaches have been committed. It's also about the potential for certain kinds of usage which are inimical to the country.
Absolutely. I'll come to 5G in a bit, but Mr. Duggal, if I can bring you in now, there is an international dimension to this entire discourse. What do you make of the US FCC, for instance, the US telecom regulator, designating Huawei and ZTE as two companies that pose a threat to US national security? What do you make of Australia's decision to invest more dollars into cyber security and increasing its capabilities? So given the given the atmosphere around the world around us, what can India do either on its own or in collaboration with other like-minded countries to combat this clear and present danger?
Clearly, I think the writing is on the wall, whether it's America, which has come to the conclusion that these Chinese companies are a threat to national security, or whether it's the Trump administration categorically saying that a number of these Chinese companies are under the direct control or management of the Chinese military, or whether it's the recent cyber attacks on Australia post their disputes with China,
Indeed.
pursuant to which Australia has flagged off this massive state actor-sponsored attack on their critical information infrastructure. I think the writing is very clear on the wall. There is no international cyber law in place. Way back in 2015 at Geneva, at the WSIS Forum, I had propagated the need for having in place an international convention on cyber security and cyber law. But most of the countries did not want to bite the bullet because almost all of them are doing covert and overt activities. And nobody wants to be caught on the wrong side of a perceived international agreement. So that's the reason there is still no unanimity at the international level as to what should be the norms of behavior in cyberspace. Even at the last UN group of governmental experts, the meeting failed primarily because they still could not come to the unanimous conclusion that the principles of international law are applicable to cyberspace, something that we know for the last 25 years, but state actors don't want to agree on the same. And right now, when we talk, there are two separate working groups of the United Nations. The United Nations group of governmental experts on the one hand, and the open-ended working group on the other, both trying to find out the norms of behavior in cyberspace. In this context, while NATO is putting to the world the attention of Talent Manual 1.0 and 2.0, but they are mere academic works and have not got much universal acceptability. In this context, I believe for India, we need to learn our lessons very, very quickly. We need to quickly realize that we are one of the biggest e-commerce markets in the world. We need to quickly realize that the absence of enabling direct legal frameworks on cybersecurity is going to make us a very fertile target. We have yet to learn from the experiences of countries like Singapore, like Vietnam, like Thailand, even go ahead and Macau, who have all come up with dedicated cybersecurity legal frameworks and regimes. And I think we have to quickly start realizing that we need to put in place these frameworks as soon as possible. If we are going to rely upon just the Information Technology Act, a 20-year-old legislation which was not on cybersecurity, to sail us through in these troubled, choppy waters, I don't think we are going to succeed. We also don't have in place the adequate standard operating procedures, which need to be informed to all stakeholders, governmental as also private sector, in terms of what they are specifically expected to do in the event that there's going to be a cyber attack. Let's all be prepared for the attack. Let's try to prepare various stakeholders in this regard. I believe, whatever is watered down the bridge, something that we can't really undo. But let's start from today. Let this be a wake-up call for India to start focusing immensely on protecting and preserving of its cybersecurity, particularly its electricity grids and power companies, particularly the banking sector and financial sectors, because that's where the attacks are going to happen. If the Maharashtra agency tells us that there are more than 40,000 attacks, all coming from China on financial institutions, it's only the tip of the iceberg. The bigger picture has yet to come in, and we as a nation need to be prepared at all levels amongst all stakeholders to face these kinds of potential imminent cyber attacks which are likely to come. Even if they don't come, no problem. The more prepared we are, the better we will be in the World Committee of Nations. And I think it'll also help us drive our thought leadership in this regard.
So this is a wake-up call, says Pawan Duggal. Mr. Chandrasekhar, Pawan Duggal referred to various stakeholders, one of which is the industry. Now, you've presided over NASSCOM. Is there scope for collaboration between or interface between government and industry to jointly tackle this problem head-on going forward?
No, absolutely. And I think that this collaboration is very much there. In fact, when the Prime Minister had attended the Silver Jubilee celebration of NASSCOM as the chief guest, he had actually referred to this. In fact, he mentioned that, in his talks with global leaders, the question that he asked all of them was, what is it that keeps you awake? What is the number one problem that keeps you awake at night? All without exception, all the major countries in the world, the answer was cybersecurity. So the awareness is very high, and the Prime Minister himself at that conference said that we need to build this collaboration between industry and the government. The industry did come up with a whole plan in terms of how this could be actually ensured.
Right.
Why? Because the law which Mr. Pawan Tuggal referred to is an important part of it. As far as cybersecurity is concerned, there are two things that we have to keep in mind.
Sure.
One is that as more and more of our critical infrastructure and our economic life and our social life migrate to the digital mode, and Corona, for example, has only accelerated a trajectory which was already there, the dependence on this medium becomes critical, and the security threats can actually bring life to a standstill. Economic life, infrastructure, social interaction, everything. And we've actually seen countries going through that challenge.
Right.
But it's not only a question of law, it's not only a question of technology, and companies have built capabilities. Those capabilities very much exist in India.
Right.
They need a considerable amount of enhancement. But it's as much about the practice. You know, it can be simple things which individuals also start doing. A lot of vulnerabilities are created by people not following the norms, starting with very simple things like, the use of their passwords, or not accepting apps which are not secure. So there are a lot.